Devil Venerable also wants to know. Chapter 80, Book Burning Immortal. The day he Wenzhou died was the apocalypse for the god of destruction. Discussion page and cause for celebration for abusive love affair. You are the only one that will remain in my heart. The atmospheres of the two were like night and day. In the discussion page of the god of destruction. What do you mean the end? When I heard such an old book was suddenly getting revised, I rushed to the site to read it, and after following for a million words, the protagonist suddenly dies. I thought he could still come back to life, but the author wrote the end. What kind of F***ing ending is this? I********* star. Author UA***, why did I pay money for this SHT? You made the protagonist into a*********, you********. Wasn't this an old classic? I even bought a physical copy once. Now the protagonist is dead before the end of the first volume. King author, I want my money back. I agree, but, previous poster, this book was never printed. Did you read a 1 million word physical copy? Then what did I buy? Was it an especially thick book with especially small text, poor paper quality, which constantly had broken punctuation replaced by question marks? That's called a pirated edition. Forget about the pirated edition. Author, what do you mean by this revision? When Zhao Ji was locked up by Xianyuan sect, I was waiting for him to make a comeback, but at the conference he just got burned to death by Yin Hanjiang. And then right afterward, the story was finished? What does this mean? Speaking of this book, The God of Destruction, I always thought it was a classic because of the mind-blowing ending. But now that I've come back to it 10 years later, I suddenly feel like the protagonist is kind of a hypocrite and the logic of the harem is questionable. I guess I've grown up and my tastes and outlook have changed. It's probably the same for the author, I guess. After getting older, he looked back on his previous work and just wasn't satisfied with it, so they decided to toss it all out and start over. I can understand the author not wanting to face his shameful past, but you have to make a sensible ending. UA********. Why are there so many s in this discussion page? Language filters. Curse words aren't suitable for children. This story isn't either, it will make you doubt your life. Let's just go read no romance stories to clean our eyes. The readers of The God of Destruction went from rage to helplessness and finally indifference as they moved on to other stories. Meanwhile, the discussion page of Abusive Love Affair was harmonious throughout. In Abusive Love Affair, Revised Edition, Bailey Qingmiao exited meditation and have reached Mahayana, achieving minor enlightenment of the path of indifference. After hearing that he Wenzhou had died and that she had been appointed as the new sect master, she was silent for a moment and then accepted her new responsibility. Her disciple Suhui was puzzled. She was already at Mahayana and would soon be able to ascend, so why did she want to tie herself to Shangqing sect? Bailey Qingmiao smiled gently at her disciple and said, "Do you think that Shangqing sect and the entire righteous path all consists of people who chase after fame?" "All of them, except for you," Suhui answered angrily. On Taiyin Mountain, he had also been listening as Yin Hanjiang interrogated the scums of the righteous sect on each and every one of their misdeeds. When he realized just how much dirt had been smeared on Xianyuan sect, he was furious, wishing that sect master Yin would just burn everyone there, but sect master Yin hadn't done so. He just eliminated the blood demon, then gave all the prisoners back to their sects, for them to deal with themselves. If you ask Suhui, the best would be killing all the righteous experts present so Xianyuan sect could take over the cultivation world. But do you know why the righteous cultivators could push all these deeds onto Xianyuan sect? Bailey Qingmiao asked. That, Suhui found himself wordless. He wanted to say that Xianyuan sect had a bad reputation, but why was its reputation bad? Because it really had done many awful things. Before sect master Wenren unified the demonic sects, Xianyuan sect truly was capable of all evils. Bailey Qingmiao thought back to Zhongli Qian's teachings and the stories of the past that Master Qingxue had told her. Their actions were in no way inferior to those of the righteous sects today. Over these past several years, Bailey Qingmiao had been free from Shangqing sect, wandering the world and witnessing the sufferings of the mortal realm with her own eyes. She understood that the world wasn't black and white. When her eyes, which previously blinded by infatuation, had been cleared, her understanding of the world had changed. She patted Suhuai's hand and said, after Wenren he became the devil Venerable, he used harsh methods to purge the ranks of the subordinates of the old Xianyuan sect master. That was destruction. He then reformed the sect's ranks, ordering everyone to follow new regulations. That was rebirth. After 100 years, Xianyuan sect has transformed from a demonic sect to a sect where anyone can express their natural inclinations. You feel comfortable in Xianyuan sect because everyone there is true to themselves, displaying malice and kindness openly with no pretenses or masks. But the one who made this possible was none other than Wenren he. As for what happened today, when Yin Hanjiang unmasked the righteous sect's years-old decay on Taiyin Mountain, it was destruction. After all these years of the righteous sects taking in disciples from far and wide, they had inevitably ended up being unable to manage them. A large sect is bound to have rotten elements. If they don't excise them with a firm hand, the rot will spread to healthy flesh, until distinction between righteous and demonic have no more meaning. Right and wrong, black and white, are intertwined and chaos ensues under heaven. So, what sect Master Yin did was for the benefit of the righteous sects. Suhuai asked in astonishment. Master, have you become smarter? Did you really think of all this yourself? Sir Zhongli probably taught you, right? He was close with Qiu Kongxiu and Bailey Qingmiao was a friendly person, so there was no distinction of age between them. Bailey Qingmiao tapped a finger on Suhuai's forehead. Your master thought of it herself. After your master obtained the iridescent blood flame silk, she remembered a great deal. The iridescent blood flame silk was transformed from the divine bloodstone which the primordial goddess had prepared in order to regain her divinity, so it also stored some memories of her previous life. After ascending to Mahayana, Bailey Qingmiao gradually regained some of those memories. Having been influenced by He Wenzao's previous incarnation, she really had believed that what she had done was wrong. Only now that she reincarnated and saw Wenren He and Yin Hanjiang's actions did she come to understand. Sect Master Yin's destruction is painful to the righteous sects, but it's also their only path for survival, Bailey Qingmiao said regretfully. In my previous life, I brought immeasurable pain to the mortal realm. To an individual life, this pain was a devastating blow, but to the cosmos, each disaster is a chance for a new start. Suhuai cocked his head as he listened, not really understanding. In my previous life, I always brought about destruction, never rebirth. The leadership of Shangqing sect is an opportunity for me. Shangqing sect is the leader of the righteous sects, so the sect master used his life to wash away the stain that He Wenzao brought to it and trusted me enough to give me this chance to reform the sect and the righteous path. I cannot refuse such a heavy responsibility. Bailey Qingmiao's expression grew solemn as she faced the direction of Taiyin Mountain where the sect master had passed, and she made a deep bow. She faintly felt deep inside that the day she led the righteous sects to once again gain prestige in the world would be the day she was qualified to regain the divine nature. The primordial goddess had been born together with heaven and earth, and all of her thoughts and actions were in order to preserve the realms. If only disaster existed in the cosmos, then it would head toward inevitable extinction. Disaster was only a means to clear out the weeds, refreshing the cosmos so it could grow brighter. Suhuai was still confused. Bailey Qingmiao asked if he wanted to go to Shangqing sect or stay at Xianyuan sect, and after a lot of thought, he decided that he would follow his master. Even though Xianyuan sect was his aspiration, his master was a bit dumb and he was afraid that she would get pushed around at Shangqing sect, so he couldn't leave her alone. Besides, if he stayed at Xianyuan sect, that hall master called Qing would keep watching him secretly, paranoid about him stealing his place as the master of Hellfire Hall. Suhui thought the members of Xianyuan sect were a bit out of control, and even Sir Zhongli, with all his intelligence, was about to go bald. He rubbed his thick head of hair and thought there was nothing wrong with being a head disciple at Shangqing sect. Before Bailey Qingmiao left Xianyuan sect, some people who got along well with her showed up to say their farewells. Qiu Kongxiu was highly unsatisfied. Her disciple had finally reached Mahayana stage, but instead of joining forces with her to assassinate Wenren and Yin Hanjiang, she was heading off to be the sect master of Shangqing sect. She grabbed Bailey Qingmiao and yelled at her for a while until Suhui couldn't listen to it anymore. He pulled her aside and quietly told her that his master wanted to unify the righteous path. Qiu Kongxiu's eyes instantly brightened, and puffing out her chest, she said, "Go get it done, and by the time you've unified the righteous sects, I'll be the Xianyuan sect master. By then, when we meet on the battlefield as master and disciple, it will be legendary." Suhui rubbed his forehead, feeling like what she was saying wasn't even close to legendary. "Don't you worry," the alluring protector Shu said as she stroked Suhui's face. "With this protector around, there's no way your martial elder is going to take over the demonic sect. If she becomes the leader, she'll probably turn the whole sect into ghosts, and if everyone would become skeleton with no flesh, who will this protector dual cultivate with then?" Faced with Protector Shu's overwhelming beauty, Suhui's face reddened and he backed up several steps. Watching her warily, he spoke, "I'm entering the righteous sect with my master, I'll never dual cultivate with you." Shu Yanyan laughed slightly and took a few steps forward to squeeze Suhui's cheeks. "I wouldn't touch someone like you. You're too serious and sentimental, who's willing to give up everything for the person you love. I can't take responsibility for that." While Shu Yanyan talked to Suhui, Qing quietly moved up to Bailey Qingmiao and presented a jade talisman with both hands. "What's this?" Bailey Qingmiao said, looking doubtfully at him. During her stay at Xianyuan sect, she hadn't actually have any disagreements with Hall Master Shi. When she was unconscious, she instinctively took Hall Master Shi's sickness Qi in order to protect herself and fend off the divine nature. Thus, she had owed him a debt. But after she returned the sickness Qi, it had been strengthened by the body of the primordial goddess that commanded disasters, so Hall Master Shi had gained power, and with that, Bailey Qingmiao had repaid her debt. There's a curse inside. You can use it if anyone defies you," Qing said timidly. Every time he laid eyes on Bailey Qingmiao, he wanted to fall to his knees and offer everything he had to her. He really didn't understand it. "Thank you." Even if she wasn't necessarily going to use it, Bailey Qingmiao still accepted his gift. And thinking back to the tracking curse that had been placed on Zhongli Jian and herself, curses didn't necessarily have to be bad things, as long as they were used in the right ways. Thinking about the friend she had traveled with for 30 years, she looked at Zhongli Jian and cupped her hands towards him in farewell. There were no unnecessary words or demands made of each other. A relationship between gentlemen was as faint as water, but Bailey Qingmiao knew that if she ever met with trouble in the future, Zhongli Jian was sure to help her out. And if Zhongli Jian needed help, she would do the same. After bidding farewell to Bailey Qingmiao, Zhongli Jian asked Shu Yanyan, "Protector Shu, when will the two sect masters exit seclusion? I need to resign and take my leave of them." "Exit seclusion?" Shu Yanyan lifted a slender hand to cover her surprised expression. "Who knows how much longer that will take? Yesterday, upon returning to Xianyuan sect, Sect Master Wenren borrowed a manual from me before entering seclusion. He asked for the most profound manual which not even I have grasped yet, so if he wants to master it, it might take 30 or 50 years. Zhongli Jian." He looked toward Bailey Qingmiao, hoping his friend could lend him a hand, but Bailey Qingmiao had hurried off right after saying her farewells and was long since gone. Zhongli Jian let out a long sigh. The two sect masters seemed to be leaving the task of controlling the demonic cultivators entirely to him. They say that once you set foot on a pirate ship, you can't leave anymore. Zhongli Qian understood exactly what that meant now. Abusive love affair. Last page stopped on this chaotic scene. Each of the readers acted as if they were proud to see their first daughter grow up. Sob, sob. Reading Bailey King Miao's final lines, I feel like my daughter who's been tricked into running off with a scummy man finally grew up. It's such a bittersweet warm feeling, it's great. Yeah, she not only stomped on him, but stole his company. Beautifully done. After reading for over 1,000,000 words, there wasn't any romance up to the end, or you could say it was a romance between Wenren He and Yin Hanjiang written from Bailey King Miao's point of view, so it was actually a denmei. I'm pondering the title. Abusive love affair? All I see is Yin Hanjiang awesomely destroying He Wenzhao. Where's the abuse? Abuse of Zhongli Qian's hair. After this, he needs to keep the demonic cultivators in check. An award-winning teacher goes bald over his misbehaving students. Is this twisted morality or the decay of societal values? Ha 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 ha. Stop it, it's too vivid. My poor Qian, he might as well shave off all his hair. Monks are self-restrained and good-looking, and it's better than having a bald spot. Who says there's no abusive romance? Bailey Qingmiao and Elder Qingxiu 100 years later, one the leader of the righteous sects, the other the demon lord, forced to kill each other even though they love one another. Back then, I saved your body and you helped me escape a worthless man and saved my soul. We supported each other for 30 years, how could we end up facing each other in battle? Isn't that cruel? You're thinking too much. Qingxiu doesn't have the brains to become the sect leader. If she goes for the position, Sister Shu won't let her. Speaking of Sister Shu, I want to see how her most profound techniques can take 30 to 50 years to master. Me too. Slap. Yin Hanjiang slammed shut the abusive love affair. You are the only one that will remain in my heart, giving up on reading the comments. With the book in hand, he eyed the lamp by the bed and slowly extended the book to the flame. A sturdy arm reached over and took the book out of his hand. A lazy voice sounded by his ear. What does it say that makes you angry enough to burn it? This lord is just concerned. Yin Hanjiang opened his mouth but found that his throat was hoarse, and took a cup of spiritual wine from his kinkan pouch, gulping it down before he continued. This work is malicious and might affect one's emotions. He roughly went over how, when Wenren he was in the Sea of Blood, he had read about the scenes from the original edition of the book and it had aggravated his heart demons. It isn't just you who have experienced that. Wenren he thought back to how, when Qiu Kongxiu had been saved by Bailey Qingmiao in his place, the original dialogue had appeared in her mind. When Shi Kongxin first saw Bailey Qingmiao, she also saw the divine light. It just that when the same plot was placed on a different person, a completely different outcome would result. Why would such a thing happen? Yin Hanjiang took out Abusive Love Affair, and the 3 books of the God of Destruction and flipped through them, finding that Volume 2 and Volume 3 of the God of Destruction had already become blank. Aside from people still hurling insults in the discussions, there were no signs of a revision. I've always had a question. In both the God of Destruction and Abusive Love Affair's comments, there has never been any mention of the other book. They clearly have the same 2 protagonists, so has no one read both books? Wenren he said. Yin Hanjiang was bewildered for a moment. Staring at the books, various guesses flashed through his mind but only one was closest to a plausible answer. The 2 books don't exist in the same world. Correct, Wenren he said. The myriad worlds are all disconnected from each other but they also influence each other. The cultivation realm has many legends about the immortal realm and the divine realm but when it comes to whether they're true or not, we can't know until we go to the immortal realm or the divine realm. Yet this doesn't stop us from knowing things and discussing them. Our story is the same. From the viewpoints of different people, it's reflected in different worlds. Thus, no book in one world has the entire story and only the perspective of a certain person. If I have to give a judgment on both books, I'd say these two books are warnings about the end of the three realms. The fact that they each appeared in different hands is heaven working in mysterious ways, spreading the knowledge of the calamity facing the three realms. Whether or not the people who obtain the books can grasp the single chance of survival would depend on how they act. As for the plot appearing in people's minds, it could be the doings of the divine nature, or a warning from heaven, or even other worlds influencing ours. But there could also be other reasons, so it's impossible for me to judge. The only thing we can be certain of is that, after cultivating the path of indifference and taking on the leadership of Shang-Qing sect, Bailey King Miao's will should be firm enough to subjugate the divine nature. Yin Hanjiang didn't care about whether or not Bailey Qing Miao could save the three realms. If you asked him, being able to live and die alongside Wenren, then being together with him after death and becoming the new cosmos, was a fine conclusion. I wonder if there's a book with us as the main characters. Yin Hanjiang suddenly asked as he flipped casually through the book over the oil lamp. Who knows? Wenren smiled slightly and didn't stop Yin Hanjiang's move to burn the book. Would you object to our story being read? What does it matter to me? Yin Hanjiang tossed the book onto the ground. Just as Wenren had said, even if other worlds could see their story, they didn't have the power to affect the two of them. To Yin Hanjiang, the most important thing was that Wenren was alive and they were together. This was all that matters. Yin Hanjiang's usually tied up neatly long hair, was loose over the bed with one lock being lain on by Wenren, but he didn't mind. He picked up a lock of their entwined hair and began playing with it. Is the burning sky immortal me or someone else? Am I the reincarnation of the burning sky immortal, or just someone who stole his position? When we reach the immortal realm, we'll naturally know the answer. In order to reach the immortal realm sooner, should we practice protector shoes techniques again? Wenren asked. Yin Hanjiang threw an arm over Wenren and turned over. He closed his half-lidded eyes, hiding his look of triumph. As he turned over, he flicked a wrist and set aflame the 4 books discarded on the floor. The fire illuminated their somewhat shadowy bedroom. Seeing the light in the corners of his eyes, Yin Hanjiang smiled. The end. Devil Venerable also wants to know. Extra Chapter 1, The End. At the grand conclusion of The God of Destruction, Volume 3, He Wenzhou used his divine power to reconstruct the 3 realms, living in eternal peace and happiness with his wives and friends in the divine realm. Several centuries later, He Wenzhou also used his memories to recreate many people from the divine realm, immortal realm, and human realm. He was the supreme God in all the realms whom no one dared to defy. Everyone obeyed him without any hint of dissent. At the beginning, He Wenzhou thought this kind of life was wonderful. He could go freely throughout the 3 realms and no one dared to threaten him or his friends and loved ones. He didn't need to constantly worry about people and gods plotting to harm him. The 3 realms belonged to him, and it was a peaceful and happy existence. But a few centuries later, He Wenzhou grew tired of this life. The peace without any sort of disruption and the days and years spent with the same routine caused He Wenzhou to gradually find everything tedious. Everything unfolded in accordance to his wishes without anything unexpected happening. Life was bland, with no surprise or delight to speak of. One day, acting out of callousness, he called in the beautiful Gongzijin and then called in Bailey Qingmiao. Then he made out with Gongzijin right in front of Bailey Qingmiao. Bailey Qingmiao's expression was calm. She was even smiling slightly as she said, "Shikshan treats Gongziji so well." He Wenzhou pushed Gongzijin aside and grabbed Bailey Qingmiao by the shoulders. "Aren't you jealous? Aren't you bitter? I remember when I had any contact with any female disciple in the past, even with just an exchange of a few words, you would start a fight over it." Bailey Qingmiao didn't act like her shoulders hurt. She pressed her forehead against He Wenzeo's arm and said meekly, "But Shikshan, you don't actually like them. You just can't help it? I know the one you love the most is me. Then, why don't you be a little willful, argue with me or something?" He Wenzeo gripped Bailey King Miao's shoulders hard. "I'm using so much force, doesn't it hurt?" "How could it not?" He Wenzeo could hear the sound of bones being crushed. "How could I argue with Shikshan? Shikshan is the supreme god in charge of all of the three realms. With how busy you are, how could I inconvenience you?" Bailey Qingmiao said. "Also, my shoulders don't hurt. Even if they were injured, Shikshan will just heal them for me, right?" After he heard what she said, He Wenzeo took his hands away in a daze. Back when he resurrected his little Shimei, he had thought that his little Shimei was so good, she was just too jealous. He was the divine emperor, so what was the problem with him having relations with a few goddesses? It would be so great if his Shimei didn't have such a temper. So, the new Bailey Qingmiao was always dedicated to He Wenzeo, never raising a fuss or causing trouble, just waiting patiently in her palace every day for her Shikshan to come to her. He Wenzeo left Bailey Qingmiao's palace and went looking for his main wife, the Xiling goddess. Seeing He Wenzeo coming with an album in hand, the Xiling goddess said, "Dearest, that's an album of the goddesses of the divine realm. Are there any you've been close to recently, that you need me to arrange marriage with?" Staring at the Xiling goddess, He Wenzeo said, "I'm your husband. Isn't it hard for you to arrange marriages for other women to me? My dearest is so gallant that these goddesses are blessed to be able to marry him." "No," the Xiling goddess said. "As I remember, you would secretly eliminate the women you didn't like. Even if He Wenzeo never mentioned some things, that didn't mean he hadn't noticed them. I remember you disliked Gongzijin the most, so why haven't you gotten rid of her?" "Because my husband likes her, of course." There was no emotion in the Xiling goddess' smile. She resembled a finely crafted puppet. He Wenzeo opened the album. Each and every woman was beautiful in her own way, but he could no longer tell the difference between their appearances. "Just look through and pick a few," He Wenzeo said, leaving with a disinterested wave. His wives all looked like what he wanted. He Wenzeo knew all their words and actions in advance, because all of them had been created by him, even the future wives he took. He came to Yao Jiaping's palace. Yao Jiaping was now a god of medicine, in charge of the miraculous natural medicines. When He Wenzeo arrived, Yao Jiaping's wife, Xiao Yi, was tending the herbs in the garden. Upon seeing him, she bowed to him. "Divine Emperor. Where's Yao Jiaping?" He Wenzeo never had much of an impression of Xiao Yi, so the one he created looked exactly like the original but had the personality like a blank sheet of paper. "He's treating a patient," Xiao Yi replied. When he heard that, He Wenzeo furrowed his brows and barged into Yao Jiaping's rooms. He saw him putting on his clothes with a woman lying on his bed. Her eyes looked like Xiao Yi's, probably a patient or a patient's relative. "You've already found Xiao Yi, so why are you still doing this?" He Wenzeo said furiously, grabbing Yao Jiaping. "Isn't your heart dedicated to Xiao Yi?" After tying his belt, Yao Jiaping said, "I'm the god of medicine, so what's wrong with me getting on with a few women? She can increase her power by dual cultivating with me, too. Besides, Xiao Yi is the only one in my heart. If it's with other people, I'm only fooling around. Aren't you the same? Your love for Bailey Qingmiao doesn't get in the way of you marrying the Xiling goddess, Gongzijin, and all those other goddesses. You scum." He Wenzeo sent Yao Jiaping flying with one blow. Yao Jiaping flew out of the palace and got heavily injured. Xiao Yi instantly threw herself in front of him. "If you want to kill my husband, you'll have to kill me first." "Your husband?" He Wenzeo's eyes turned cruel. He pointed a finger to one side, creating an identical Yao Jiaping. "How about that one?" Xiao Yi instantly threw herself in front of the other Yao Jiaping and said, "If you want to kill my husband, you'll have to kill me first." Ha 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 ha. He Wenzhao let out a sudden burst of chilling laughter. He took a few steps back, pointing at Xiao Yi. "These two husbands are both yours. Pick one for yourself, ha 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 ha." He left Yao Jiaping's palace, wandering aimlessly in the divine capital. False, he thought, all false. It's all my imagination, ha 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 ha. He had woken up from a centuries-long dream. He was all alone. He had spent several centuries with puppets created from his own imagination who would never disobey him. From then on, he Wenzhao no longer pampered his wives. None of them bothered him, each content to stay in their own palaces. He Wenzhao sat on his throne, idly messing with the human realm. He released a disaster here and destroyed a country there, killing an entire race. From the divine realm, he watched the destitute refugees of the human realm but felt nothing. So this is what being a god feels like. No wonder you could heartlessly unleash disasters. I get it now. He Wenzhao looked to the sky, his eyes empty as he talked to someone who wasn't there. Back when he first became a god, he thought that the primordial goddess was beautiful beyond compare. Her indifferent eyes looked equally upon all gods, as if there was no difference between them and the insects of the mortal realm. Thus, he began to constantly bother that woman, wanting her to look differently at him than everyone else, wanting those emotionless eyes to gaze at him tenderly. After they reincarnated, he fell in love with Bailey Qing Miao the moment he laid eyes on her, just like in their previous lives. Yet when he saw that his little Shimay's eyes held only himself, he felt disinterested. It felt as if something was wrong and that it was different from what he had imagined. Now he realized that what had drawn him in his previous life was that pair of eyes, emotionless yet caring, and filled with compassion. "You're no longer around, are you?" He Wenzhao rubbed his chest and suddenly said, "No, your divinity exists inside my body. We've been together all this time." The world outside was all an illusion, a mere daydream of his. Only the divine nature within his body was real, the only thing left behind by that primordial goddess. He Wenzhao curled up on the throne, his arms encircling empty air, as if embracing someone. He closed his eyes as he felt a bit tired and sank into deep slumber. The moment the divine emperor fell asleep, tremendous waves rocked the sea of blood in the human realm. After he Wenzhao took in the divine nature, he was still unable to purify the demonic energy it had commanded. Following his memories, he sealed the demonic energy in the sea of blood, which remained peaceful for all these years. Within the waves, a human figure gradually solidified above the sea of blood. He lifted his head, looking at the sky and listening to the wind around him, seemingly taking in countless pieces of information. "I see," that person spoke quietly to himself. "After this Venerable One fell into the sea of blood, so much has happened. Yin Hanjiang, the burning sky immortal, this Venerable One has truly missed a lot." He faintly remembered that after falling into the sea of blood, he had been consumed by the 180,000 demonic gods with only one of his lingering obsession remaining. As for what kind of obsession was that, he didn't really remember. But he knew that he had left an incomplete task and that couldn't die yet. So, when the divine nature destroyed the barriers of the three realms, that obsession began to absorb the demonic and divine energy around it, growing stronger. After the human and immortal realms were merged, the mindless demonic energy found the remnants of the burning sky immortal in the immortal realm. At that moment, the divine nature lost control over it, which broke the barrier between the immortal and the divine realms, and the 180,000 demonic gods attacked the divine realm, bringing the world to the brink of destruction. Finally, he Wenzhao used his soul bond with Bailey Qing Miao to take in the divine nature and sealed the demonic energy back in the sea of blood, giving time for that obsession to continue absorbing demonic energy. The moment he Wenzhao's mental stability crumbled and he closed his eyes and sealed himself off from the world, This man took his chance to gather all the demonic energy and shattered the seal on the sea of blood hell and broke out of it. He was a demon, the only remaining demonic god in the three realms, Wenren-he. Wenren-he looked at the mortal realm. His eyes could see through falsehood, so the fantasy that he Wenzhou had constructed failed to fool him. In his eyes, the three realms had already merged into one, the world was contracting, all energy returning to chaos. In the center of the mass of chaos, someone embraced the divine nature and seemed to be having a sweet dream. Unbeknownst to him, the divine nature was gradually eroding his godly power, and when it was all drained, his soul bond with Bailey Qing Miao would vanish and no one would be able to stop the divine nature from returning creation to chaos. Wenren-he arrived at the sleeping He Wenzhou's side. Placing a hand on his head, he saw his dream. The divine nature noticed Wenren-he and realized that he was the only person who could stop it from destroying the cosmos. Feeling threatened, it gathered its power in order to kill Wenren-he. "You don't need to be alarmed," Wenren-he said. "This is no longer the world that this Venerable One wishes to protect." He looked at He Wenzhou, who was currently putting all his effort toward subduing the divine nature with the soul bond, and chuckled quietly. "Burning Sky Immortal, you desperately wanted to avenge this Venerable One, so today let me fulfill your wish." With a flick of Wenren-he's wrist, the remnants of He Wenzhou's soul bond were dissolved. The divine nature burst out of He Wenzhou's body, becoming one with the cosmos, and begun to absorb chaos energy. The chaos began contracting endlessly, even affecting Wenren-he's body. He felt the demonic energy that sustained him being gradually drained away, but his heart was calm. The world had already been destroyed. The only thing that could be looked forward to was the creation of a new world. In that case, there was only one thing he could do. Wenren-he stopped resisting and dove into the chaos energy. He was absorbed and compressed by the divine nature. After millions of years, the chaos energy had been compressed to its limit and finally exploded. The conflagration brought about new life, giving rise to myriad worlds, and an obsession which had not been worn down after eons split and merged with three of the newly created worlds. In the first world, a female author typed the title, "Abusive Love Affair, You Are the Only One That Will Remain in My Heart," at her computer. In the second world, a male author typed out the God of Destruction. And in the third world, Wenren-he was in the middle of discussing the great sect war with his subordinates when he suddenly felt a space open up above his head from which a book was falling down. He caught it casually and saw on the cover, "Abusive Love Affair, You Are the Only One That Will Remain in My Heart." End chapter. Devil Venerable also wants to know. Extra Chapter 2, 10 years later. Xianyuan Sect, Main Hall. Zhongli Qian was talking business with Xu Yanyan in the discussion room. For the past 10 years, Wenren-he had ignored him, as well as the resignation notice that he would send to both Wenren-he and Yin Hanjiang every half-month. After persistently sending 240 talismans over the past 10 years, he finally got an annoyed response from Wenren-he: "If you find someone suitable to manage Xianyuan Sect, you can hand the position over to them and leave." After receiving this message, Zhongli Qian happily touched his hair and hurried to find Xu Yanyan. He passed the regulations that he had written over the past years governing the rewards and punishments, stocks of spiritual stones, the methods of sect members and their potential advancements and bottlenecks in the future, to turn them all over to Xu Yanyan. Seeing how she leaned on the desk with no intention of checking the jade slips, he was forced to explain every point to her. After 10 years, Xu Yanyan was still as beautiful as a young maiden. She yawned as she looked at Zhongli Qian with bleary eye. 40 years ago, when I met you at that literature conference, why didn't I realize you were so long-winded?" At the literature conference, Zhongli Qian had discussed classics and composed poetry. Each of his lines were eloquent and uplifting even if one didn't understand a word of it. Right now, he was talking about how many first-grade, upper-grade, mid-grade and lower-grade spiritual stones were in storage, what worries the sect members had lately, what the hall masters were planning and how to keep them content, and so on. Xu Yanyan couldn't stop her eyelids from growing heavy as she listened. She pinched Zhongli Qian's handsome face and said wearily, "No wonder the scholars of the mortal world are so distinguished and elegant as students, like a tender bamboo stalk that one couldn't help but want to sample. But after passing the exams, they all become gluttonous officials with potbellies and wrinkles, and on top of being ugly, they can't even compose a poem and stink of alcohol. Ah, Zhongli Qian." She shook her head with a sigh, as if lamenting a beauty past its prime. Zhongli Qian, who had been youthful and handsome for many years. After some thought, he replied, "After all these years at Xianyuan sect, I'm still a teacher of the Dao and haven't changed." "I know." Xu Yanyan suddenly stood up. Stroking his chin as she spoke tenderly, "You've lost weight." Zhongli Qian was stunned. Xu Yanyan said seriously, "I celebrate you being a student or a teacher, but don't bother yourself with Xianyuan sect's odd jobs anymore. That does not suit to you. A teacher passes on knowledge and values. You make every effort for your disciples, but there are times when you have to take your hand away. Everyone walks their own paths and you can't do it for them. You're exhausting yourself." Zhongli Qian stared at the jade slips on the table, one of which recorded each sect member's future path of cultivation. He had written down everything he could think of, but in truth, there were countless possibilities he hadn't been able to write. "As for me, I follow my heart in everything. I sample everything I like and discard everything I don't like. If I appreciate someone, I'll interact with them more. If I respect them, I'll be honest with them and share my feelings and not treat them lightly," Xu Yanyan said. "I respect Sir Zhongli, so I'm willing to let someone I desire leave me. But at the same time, I'm happy to let go because I want Zhongli Qian to forever remain a gentleman, a revered teacher. If you let this pack of fools degrade your principles, then I won't be so nice to you anymore." Zhongli Qian pondered for a long time and then cupped his hands in salute to Xu Yanyan. "Many thanks to Protector Xu for her guidance. I understand now." He had given so much to Xianyuan sect over all these years, and without him noticing, it had become a fetter for him, just like the Zhongli clan, and it gradually took away his freedom, causing him to forget his original intent. He had originally wanted to spread the Dao to the entire realm. However, the Dao he wanted to teach wasn't rigid, and thus each person would have a different understanding and arrive at their own path. And right now, he had nearly planned out the future paths of all the members of Xianyuan sect, instead of letting them develop on their own. "I'm glad you understand." Xu Yanyan picked up the jade slips. "I'll look at the things you put together, but as for whether or not I'll follow your instructions, we'll have to see about that. This protector has her own path, so I don't want you buzzing by my ear like a fly, telling me to do this and not that. People who speak too much aren't attractive." "I understand." Zhongli Qian smiled slightly, carefree like the night breeze. "You can go," Xu Yanyan said. "Spread your Dao across the world and let me see if peace can exist under heaven. Also, come back every few years so I can admire your face, okay? The great Confucius once said, 'Anyone can be my teacher.' The path of teaching isn't just about teaching others but finding one's own teachers, which can be anyone in the world. Today, Protector Xu has been my teacher," Zhongli Qian said. Staring at his face, Xu Yanyan pressed a hand against her forehead, waving him off with her other hand. "Hurry up and go, before I make you be my teacher for a day." With a smile, Zhongli Qian said, "Then this is farewell. A few years later, when my realm has advanced, I'll come back to discuss the Dao with Protector Xu." Watching his departing figure, Xu Yanyan shook her head. "You better not come back, or I really won't be able to resist." She picked up a jade slip, looking through everyone's current information until she got to Qiu Kongxiu. It was written, "Protector Qiu frequently goes to Shangqing sect issue a duel challenge, and after losing to Bailey Qingmiao, she goes to beat up Su Huai." With her motivation, the three have each made swift progress, so it could possibly be considered legendary. The corners of Xu Yanyan's mouth twitched. Someone like her who sought pleasure in the moment, she could never understand how Qiu Kongxiu's brain worked. Oh, right, she didn't have a brain. She never thought about anything and just relied on her instincts for everything, huh. It's a good thing Bailey Qingmiao and Su Huai spoil her and let her use Shangqing sect as a playground. That was fine, with Protector Qiu at Shangqing sect all day, Xu Yanyan had one less rival for the position of sect leader. As for the other two, Protector Xu gazed toward Wenrenhe's room. By the time those two came out, they would probably be heading off to the immortal realm to terrorize the immortals there, so by then, Xianyuan sect would be hers. But this was somewhat boring. They were going to the immortal realm to throw their weight around, and since she was so dedicated to rising in the ranks, shouldn't she follow and become a leader of immortals? Sitting at the desk with her chin in her hands, Xu Yanyan began to seriously consider focusing on her cultivation. ******. At the back mountains of Xianyuan sect, a red-robed man sat barefoot at the edge of the spring, silently watching the moon in the sky. The black-robed man sat leaning against his back, also looking at the sky, not understanding what there was to see about the moon. Wenrenhe casually spoke his question, and after a long pause, Yin Hanjiang replied behind him. On that day you found me, the moon was especially bright and the night was peaceful. When I managed to stick my head from the corpse pile, I saw you slowly approaching in the moonlight. You walked with no sound and my vision was weak, so if the moon hadn't been so bright, I would have missed you. Put that way, the full moon truly is beautiful. Wenrenhe turned and pulled Yin Hanjiang into his lap. The night wind blew their loose hair to one side. Seeing their hair together, Yin Hanjiang controlled the wind with a flick of his fingers and tied their hair together in a knot. Yin Hanjiang's hand landed casually on Wenrenhe's body, but firmly pinned his robe. Noticing his actions, Wenrenhe didn't say anything but instead, used chaos energy to entangle the two's hair completely together, so they couldn't tell whose was whose. After Zhongli Qian leaves, Xu Yanyan will rule over the place again, Yin Hanjiang said, suddenly remembering. That doesn't matter. She can solve a lot of problems. But if you like being sect leader, I'll shoo her off for you. I'm not interested. Yin Hanjiang turned his head, looking at the side of Wenrenhe's face in the moonlight. Then what do you want? Under his gaze, Wenrenhe's throat slightly trembled. Yin Hanjiang leaned toward Wenrenhe and whispered in his ear. Under the moonlight. The next few words were spoken in a way that only Wenrenhe could hear. He noticed that Yin Hanjiang's ears were bright red. All right. With one hand, he grabbed Yin Hanjiang's waist. Underneath the moonlight, their belt sashes fluttered in the wind, landing in the spring and reflecting a silver shine on the water's surface. End chapter.